I don't have much thoughts on that, but my two comments are that I talk to a lot of Bitcoin traders and folks that seem to have a very good pulse and touch on this market. I don't say that I do because I don't really look at it every day, but they seem to think that this thing is on a death march to 100K. I'm not sure whether that price is realistic or not in a year, but I will say that we're going to get to a tipping point where everybody really talks about this. I still don't think we're there yet. I think we're just at the beginning. But when you see the inflows into these ETFs, J-Cal, it's like a very big deal because it just allows every mom and pop individual to buy some to the extent that they want to own it or they want to speculate on it, whatever it is. So I think it's been a very big year. And I think that psychologically, it's proven a lot of folks wrong. And it's a setup for something really constructive. The other thing I'll say is that it's not just Bitcoin, but as goes Bitcoin, there are a handful of other things. People are now speculating that there's going to be an Ethereum ETF that gets approved as well. Because, if you approve one, there's probably legitimate cause to approve a few others. So these things are becoming part of the financial fabric. And I think that should not be underestimated.
And the SEC is still taking action against certain bad actors in crypto. There were a couple of those this week, but Bitcoin, Friedberg, is incredibly resilient just on a technological basis. The fact that it hasn't broken down under stress, it hasn't had, a denial of service type of attack, or a government hasn't been able to capture 51% of the mining or some great amount of it, or just even be hacked in any way. You have to be impressed by the fundamental technology here, Friedberg. Maybe you could speak to that level of success, that this thing is so stable and trustworthy and reliable to date.
It's got a great incentive model. As long as Bitcoin price remains high, the miners will still be there and the system will keep running. If Bitcoin price drops, transaction fees will decline, the value of mining will decline, and it kind of goes the other way as well. I think the real question is, in the last couple of years, have we really seen a change in Bitcoin being used for transactions or for commerce in any meaningful way? I think the answer is still likely not.
No, definitely not.
And it's really a stored value system, and it's become this kind of stored value asset.
Friedberg, this microplastics thing, we talked about it on the show. And since that time, I refuse to open plastic bottles. I'm doing all glass. I'm getting rid of all this goddamn plastic. I already did glass bottles in my house because I'm cheap and I like to fill it from my water filter, but we're uncovering more information. And then I saw this headline this week that microplastics are in our blood streams in some cases. And what the heck does that mean?
It's worse than that.
Team of scientists in Italy collected samples from patients that had plaque removed from the carotid artery. It's a kind of common cardiac procedure where you get plaque that blocks up in your carotid. They go in, they remove the plaque. So a total of 304 patients agreed to have the plaque that was removed from their artery submitted for analysis. And then what this team did is they took that plaque and they studied it to see how much plastic was found in that plaque. And they used a bunch of measurement techniques to do this, including electron microscopy and mass spec. So because it's really hard to find these molecules. And microplastics or nanoplastics, remember, are less than 5 millimeters in size with a mean level of 21 micrograms per milligram of plaque. Roughly 1 per 50 is the ratio of plastic to plaque that they found, which is really incredible because it shows that plastics, these little nano and microplastics, are accumulating.
Incredible good or incredible bad?
Incredible bad. That these microplastics, these nanoplastics are accumulating in the human body. Now, here's the scary part. They then did a follow-up 34 months later. The patients that had plastic in their blood had a 4.5 times higher ratio or likelihood of having a heart attack, stroke, or death from any cause. So all of these major health effects were 4.5 times elevated in patients that had plastic in their blood. This was published in the New England Journal of Medicine, if I didn't say it. It really indicates that there is this kind of cumulative problem, and that the cumulative problem is likely leading to really adverse health outcomes. And I'll just highlight one other paper from a team in Germany and Norway back in May of 2022. And this team tried to figure out how plastics are causing adverse health effects in the body. And they had a theory like, let's put little microplastics or nanoplastics together with all the human cells that we know, shake it up and see what happens. And what they found was that these little plastic fragments were binding to dendritic cells and monocytes, key cells in the immune system. And when those cells were bound by plastic, they release these cytokines and the pro-inflammatory signals go through the roof. It causes the immune system to go haywire, increases inflammation, and the cascading effects of that obviously can ultimately lead to many of the events that we're mentioning were measured in this set of patients in Italy. So again, we're just starting to uncover these effects, this concept that microplastics and nanoplastics that are accumulating. And let me just say, these plastics are mostly PET, which is what we use to make plastic bottles that we drink water and drinks out of, and PVC or polyvinyl chloride, which is what a lot of our plastic plumbing and piping is made from. And so as little tiny bits of these plastic materials either are exposed to sunlight and break off and end up in our water and food supply and we consume them, they are slowly accumulating in bodies, and they may be driving inflammatory response. They may be driving adverse health outcomes. We're really kind of tip of the iceberg and really studying this, understanding and analyzing it. But here's another really interesting empirical data set that highlights that this really is a pretty significant. Half the patients had it. And of that half, they had a 4.5 times higher chance of dying or having a heart attack or a stroke in the 34 months that followed.
Yeah,
really scary data. Yeah.
The thing that study said, which was nuts, is it looked like the nanoparticles, the nanoplastics and microplastics were effectively acting as scaffolding for plaque. So in almost like it was a shim that allowed it to grow. The question is, would it have grown faster than it would have otherwise? That's even scarier. So I did not like reading that paper. That really freaked me out. Really, really freaked me out.
I was drinking water from plastic water bottles this week, and every time I drink water out of a plastic bottle now, I'm like nervous every time I take a sip.
You're not supposed to double the risk of all-cause mortality by drinking a Fiji water. You know what I mean?
4.5x. 4.5x.
It's crazy.
In 34 months. Think about the cumulative effect over time. Over a longer period of time.
Yeah. Imagine drinking water out of a plastic bottle, thinking you're doing the right thing, and then trotting over to the recycling bin,
Yeah.
And you do that for 20 years, you may be killing yourself.
Well, there it is.
So wait, what's the if the water
glass bottles?
Yeah.
You must use. You cannot use plastic. You just
It's
cannot.
over. No plastic. No plastic.
You can't.
Nothing.
You got to stop. It's over.
We're
It's
drinking.
done.
It's done. Glass, cans, good. Plastic,
Cans are okay?
Stainless steel. Stainless steel is fine.
Just like I mentioned when we talked about this a few weeks ago, the carbon footprint, the environmental cost, the cash cost is much higher with all these alternatives to plastic. So there are big challenges with respect to having some big, massive response to plastics used in our supply. But, living in the luxury world that we all get to live in, we get to have that choice and we'll make that choice. But it's a real problem for humanity because plastics are so ubiquitous in so many things, and they've enabled affordability of consumer goods.
This is such bullshit. Honestly, all you have to do is have glass bottles or carry a water bottle with you. I have a Contigo one I like. I carry it with me. I empty it.
No,
I
but
fill it.
Cal,